Stick around because I'll be counting down my 10 favorite Anthrax songs. I'll also go into detail on why I like them so much, and maybe I'll throw in some background info about the tracks for good measure. Should be fun. Starting with a track from their first EP, Armed and Dangerous, released in 1985 by Megaforce Records, this is Raise Hell. So this was my first new release from the band, having bought Fistful of Metal many months after it came out. This was also the first Anthrax recording with then new vocalist Joey Belladonna, who took a little getting used to. The song in question can only be found on this EP, but it could have easily fit well with the tracks from their following album, Spreading the Disease, because it's got that fantastic crunching lead-in riff, a solid drum sound, and Joey's strong and melodic but aggressive vocals. Cool sing-along gang vocals in the chorus, and Joey really belts out the highs on this one. Of course, this is also the recorded debut on an Anthrax release to feature then-new bassist Frank Bello, who also sounds good on this, though he'd be much better utilized later in the discography. Check out Among the Living, the entire album, for that. Also, guitars are split up between channels. Scott's on the right, Dan's on the left, something that's easier to hear with headphones. Also, not well known is that former vocalist Neil Turbin has writing credit on both Raise Hell and the title track. Anyways, Anthrax has performed Raise Hell very few times between 1984 and 1985, including with Joey singing, so generally not a popular choice for them in concert these days. Anyways, at number 10 is Raise Hell. Next up is a song from their debut studio album, Fistful of Metal, released in 1984 by Megaforce Records. This is Metal Thrashing Mad. So straight away, the title delivers with rapid drums and speed riffing, along with the slightly gruff and falsetto screams of Mr. Neil Turbin. I mean, that pre-solo scream of his really goes the distance. Almost 10 seconds long. And yes, I actually timed it. Thing is, he does it again as the solo ends, and yet again at the track's end. Love it. I'm also reminded of the story I'd already told in my Metal Origins Part 2 video about the 17-year-old me singing this song at top volume with a complete stranger who was blasting this song on a city bus in Reno, Nevada. Go visit that video for more on that. It's also been said that the title of this song prompted the term thrash metal by music journalist Malcolm Dome in his Kerrang review of the album and his mention of this song specifically. There's also some credits controversy as former Anthrax guitarist Greg Walls claims that he was a primary songwriter on the track, as well as on others, though isn't credited on the album. Take that as you will. Anthrax has performed Metal Thrashing Mad over 450 times between 1983 and the present day, so they do drag this one out from time to time. Anyways, at number 9 is Metal Thrashing Mad. Next is a track from their 10th studio album, Worship Music, released in 2011 by Megaforce Records. This is The Devil You Know. So track starts out with aggressive and quick stop starts leading into a solid mid-paced thrash riff and Joey's more tougher vocal side. Really dig the vocal harmonies in the pre-chorus and the gang vocals in the chorus. Speaking of which, the chorus is hugely sing-alongable and extremely catchy with some decent amount of melodicism without diluting the aggression. This could have easily been on Persistence of Time. Cool solo moving between noodling and soulful wails. I would imagine this to be a high-energy tune in a live setting as well. The track concludes with a bookending of the stop-start sequence from the beginning. This was also the second single from the album, released on August 9th, 2011. Anthrax has performed The Devil You Know over 100 times between 2011 and the present day, but only a scant few times in the 2020s, which is really too bad because it's a great song. Also, the first time it was performed live was on the Late Night with Jimmy Kimmel show on September 7th of 2011. So at number 8 is The Devil You Know. Next up is a song from their 6th studio album, Sound of White Noise, released in 1993 by Elektra Records. This is Not an Exit. So heavily distorted riff opens the track with drums, leading into John's screamy, soulful vocals. But unlike a lot of tracks on this album, there are moments that break away from Bush's classic style and just go balls out vicious. In general, it loops between foreboding, some building energy, and then totally hostile, and then back again, and that's pretty cool. Breakdown is also killer, even if the megaphone vocal thing got completely done to death in the years to follow from way too many bands. As we get to the end, the playing gets more and more intense, and then the end just beats you senseless with violent repetition and a chaotic conclusion. Anthrax has performed This Is Not an Exit a little over a dozen times, and only during 1993 and 1994. Might be a strange track for Joey to sing, though, because it relies so much on Bush's tone and delivery, so I get why it might not show up in a modern live set, at least for that reason. Of this album's 4 singles, This Is Not an Exit isn't one of them, and is definitely a deep cut. In fact, deep enough to be the final song on the record. So at number 7 is This Is Not an Exit. Next is a song from their 5th studio album, Persistence of Time, released in 1990 by Island Records. This is Time. So the track opens with the sound of a ticking clock, which speeds up faster and faster, fading into a speedy single-chord riff, building drums, and then the lead-in riff over top, followed by clanging bass and snare, and then straight into the slamming fray with Joey's metered singing. The verse parts are simple and effective, with only some slight change in beat patterns, with Joey providing much of the variety in his vocal melodies. A lot of fun to sing along to, for sure. Then we get a nice return to the lead-in passage pre-solo to bring back some crunch and overall heaviness. Track ends in a cacophony of instruments and then fades out. Of course, this is Joey's last album with Anthrax before a long hiatus with a short return in the mid-2000s and again in a more permanent capacity in 2010. So some consider this album the end of an era, particularly those who didn't like the switch in singers on the next 4 albums. I'm fine with the first of those 4 albums, but then they lose me for those remaining 3 until Belladonna's return. Anthrax has performed Time almost 60 times, mostly between 1990 and 1991. In the 21st century, they played this song a whopping 5 times live. Crazy. Anyways, at number 6 is Time. Next up is a track from their 2nd studio album, Spreading the Disease, released in 1985 by Megaforce Records. This is Gungho. So, everything is manic right from the get-go, or the Gungho, take your pick. A blur of speeding riffing and drumming along with Joey keeping the vocals at a rapid pace. Love the militant gang vocals, especially the fight, fight, fight part. It's pretty much a perfect album ender, especially for a thrash record. And although This Is Not an Exit is a good example of a solid album closer, this one is definitely my favorite ender in Anthrax's entire catalog. I mean, the crazed and constant energy is really infectious. Granted, the goofy near-outro riff is unneeded, but it's thankfully short. It's actually from Symphonie des Fanfares by Jean-Joseph Moret, if that matters. But then Anthrax pulls a Venom at the very end and turns it into a noisy party. And then the track just cuts out, abruptly. Insane. Anthrax has performed Gungho over 60 times and only once so far in the 2020s. Most of the times they played it live were between 1985 to 1987. So only one single from this album, and that was Madhouse. Not on my list, but we've got 2 more tracks from this album to talk about soon enough. So there's that. Anyways, at number 5 is Gungho. Next is another song from their 2nd studio album, Spreading the Disease, released in 1985 by Megaforce Records. This is AIR. So if Gungho was a great closer, then AIR has to be a great opener, and of course it is. Sonically, it's on par with another 1985 thrash record opener, in which a couple of Anthrax members are also in. Of course, that's SOD's March of the SOD from the album Speak, English or Die, released 2 months earlier. Would it be weird to say that there is a little bit of a crossover with the 2 albums? Not really. Can't escape the Scott-Ian riff tone overlap in the 2 tracks, let alone with militant vibes in both. But Joey breaks up a lot of that with melodic, almost power metal vocals. The title of the song is an acronym for Adolescence in Red, according to Ian, but back then the title made me wonder if this was a song about communist kids instead. Right? I mean, it was the 1980s. Everything red was the commies. But anyways, it's not. And I always thought it should have stood for Adolescence in Rebellion instead, which made way more sense to me, specifically pertaining to the lyrics. But you know what? I didn't write the damn song, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, after the marching riff, it jumps straight into thrash riffing and soloing, and then into intermittent mid-paced riffing, interspersed with Joey's vocal lines. Cool breakdown to the bridge as well. Overall, total headbangable track. Anthrax has performed AIR over 300 times between 1985 and the present day. It doesn't make it to many set lists now, but it occasionally pops up. Anyways, at number 4 is AIR. Next up is yet another track from their 2nd studio album, Spreading the Disease, released in 1985 by Megaforce Records. This is Aftershock. So a quick drum intro quickly brings us to a pick slide, a scream, and crunching thrash riffing. More of that militant-style riff and drum combo we'd hear a lot on that SOD record I mentioned previously. Hey, if it worked there, why not here too? Anyways, more gang chants, this time shock, shock, shock. Yeah, I'm still on board with that. But also some repeated haze in the same vein. Also, Joey really is on fire in this track with a perfect balance of aggression and melody, notably in the chorus. And I feel mentioning that balance is important as I position this track further up my list from the other spreading songs, much for that reason. After the final chorus, we get manic, noisy soloing all the way to the end, which thematically bookends the track without any real repetition. Anthrax has performed Aftershock almost 40 times, most of which during 1986. Not a popular choice for their set list these days. I mean, so far this decade, it's only been played once. They really should bring this one back. Anyways, at number 3 is Aftershock. Next is a track from their third studio album, Among the Living, released in 1987 by Megaforce Records. This is I Am the Law. And yes, I don't have this on vinyl, and I don't know why. Anyways, a martial riff and steady matching beat quickly evolved to a more intense version of that riff, along with pounding and almost tribal beats. Joey throws a bit of grit into his vocals this time, matching the lyrics quite well. And in case you don't know, the track is about British comic book character Judge Dredd and covers many concepts from the series, including the gang shouted line "Drock it," with drock being a replacement term in the Dredd cosmology for a certain expletive starting with the letter F. And as a Dredd fan predating this album by 2 years, I was really psyched about this track, and I admittedly love it a little bit more because of that. But it also really holds its own with the amazing production work from Eddie Kramer, the punch of that drum and riff combo, and Joey really putting in his all. Speaking of gang vocals, they sound much better, clearer, and tougher than those on Spreading the Disease by a landslide. Much more obvious with me hearing the albums back-to-back for this. Really love the speed riffing passage during the pre-solo bridge part. Everything is so tight in this track overall. Cool harmonic soloing as well. And probably some of you already know this, but I Am the Law was the lead single on this record, released in February of 1987. Anthrax has performed I Am the Law almost 1,000 times between 1986 and the present day, with the most times during the 2010s. Still makes its way on most set lists these days, and for obvious reasons, one of which is that this track totally rules. So at number 2 is I Am the Law. Next up is another song from their third studio album, Among the Living, released in 1987 by Megaforce Records. This is, of course, Caught in a Mosh. So crunching chords lead to a killer bass line interrupted by a snare count, and then straight into a slamming passage, best left for experienced headbangers. And then when you think it's gonna stay there, it quickly speeds up for the manic verse riff, getting us to Joey's Spitfire vocal lines. Pre-chorus slows down to mid-pace, but still heavy and punchy, with some gang shouts both there and in the chorus. Lots of cool bass fills throughout if you're paying attention. Also dig the punky bridge section, followed briefly by what was always sound like sour notes hit by Joey, to be honest, but then straight into the solos. Then rinse, lather, repeat from the top. Also, we get that gang triple shout they've done before, this time with stomp, stomp, stomp. Don't think I noticed just how often they did that until doing this video, so even I learned something today. Anthrax has performed Caught in a Mosh well over 1,400 times between 1986 and the present day, so yes, it's a fan favorite. Speaking of which, both Caught in a Mosh and I Am the Law pretty much get equal time on modern set lists for the band. Also, Caught in a Mosh was ranked number 29 in VH1's 40 Greatest Metal Songs. I'm going to assume that means ever. Either way, it probably deserves it. So my number 1 Anthrax song is Caught in a Mosh. So yeah, I know, nothing from State of Euphoria is on my list. Truth be known, it really did fall away from me after the 1980s, and I never considered it on par with the albums on either side of it, chronologically. I might get more into that if I feature it on an episode of Do I Still Like? Or Hate? Which is a likely choice because I have thought about it through the years. In any case, no songs from State of Euphoria ever really stick with me, let alone make my top 10. Of course, my list being very subjective means that some of you will differ on your own choices. In fact, because we are all individuals, it's a sure bet our lists aren't exactly the same. So let me know which placements you agree with, which ones you do not, and which tracks might make up your own top 10 Anthrax songs. I'd love to see your lists in the comments below. And if you're just joining me and you don't know much about my channel, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I do videos on classic and modern metal, but also metal vinyl collecting. If you like the sound of that, you should definitely like this video, maybe subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and of course, share my videos with your friends on social media. Great way to get the word out about my channel, and it's always hugely appreciated. Anyways, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.